Have you ever wondered what creates a serial killer? How is a serial killer created? Well, this man, Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, has all the answers. Now, Jeffrey Dahmer was an American serial killer as well as sex offender who raped, killed, and dismembered the bodies of 17 young boys. Now, before he was even grown up, he was already running into trouble. His mother was actually having a very hard time breastfeeding, and so she automatically went to using the bottle, which was the first form of neglect for him as a child. And all this neglect will add up to create trauma for him as a child. He also, his mother also had to spend a lot of time in the bed resting after the pregnancy because she had such a hard time with it. And so the father as well was also taking care of the mother the whole time. And so the father was also neglecting Jeffrey Dahmer as a child as well. He also had a double hernia surgery at the age of 4, which is a pretty intense thing to go through as a child. And so this also added more trauma to him as a child. And as stated in the Macmillan Encyclopedia of Death and Dying, the end result of a childhood full of trauma tends to follow the path of low self-esteem and increasingly violent fantasies. And I'll talk about more of the increasing violent fantasies that he had later on. He also dismembered the bodies of little animals and things he found on the road, like roadkill. He really enjoyed just dismembering the bodies and like figuring out how it works. And that was just one of the first fantasies he had. He actually even decapitated the head of a dog one time and put it on a stick in the middle of the woods, and then like pinned the body on a tree. Just he had really weird things that he really enjoyed doing and was obsessed with. He also became an alcoholic at a very young age. At the age of 14, he started drinking. He started drinking at school, before school, after school. People would ask him like, "Oh, why are you drinking?" And he always just tried to brush it off and say like, "Oh, like I'm just going through a lot right now." But he was actually becoming an alcoholic at a very young age. And stated in the Vault, about 90 out of every 100 murders are done by habitual drinkers when drunk. So this was just not a good sign starting off right after that. As far as mental health goes, his mother was also taking 26 pills a day during her pregnancy, and this just created the immersing her fetus, which was Jeffrey Dahmer at the time, in just a soup of powerful depressants, as stated in the St. James Encyclopedia of Popular Culture. And then he also was a sadist, and if you don't know what a sadist is, sadism is the experience of sexual pleasure or sensations produced by the acts of cruelty, bodily punishment, afflicted on one's own person or when witnessed in others, be they animals or human beings, as stated in the validation of the sexual sadism scale. So he basically enjoyed the pleasure, he got pleasure from seeing other people in pain. He also may have had Asperger's disorder, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but this also could have had to do with why he became a serial killer. So in this graph here, from the Is There a Relationship Beyond Substance Use article, you can see on the left side it says percent violence, and then SMI means serious mental illness. So you can see that with SMI plus SU, the greatest amount of violence is with people with disorders. Now he had like the most primary setup for killing. So his apartment was room 213, and he had everything planned out. So he had a metal door on his bedroom so that none of the smells would, of like the dead bodies would get out to other people to smell. And he also had a lot of different containers that he had that were also smell-proof so that no one could smell any of the weird experiments he was doing as well. And then he also had a security system so he could make sure no one just barged into his house and saw the crazy things he was doing. He ended up murdering 17 young boys, but he only pleaded guilty to 15 of these murders. And then he would lure them in with money or drugs, and then once they were in his apartment, he would either knock them unconscious or he would drug them or handcuff them. And that's how he got his victim. He also had Polaroid photographs of dismembered bodies in his apartment. He had 4 heads in the freezer and jars containing genitalia. And then once he was caught by one of the victims. Actually ran out of the apartment and caught like 2 policemen, and they brought him back to the apartment, and that's when they caught him. He was when he was imprisoned, he was put into solitary confinement because they were worried that people would try to kill him since he was such a crazy guy, and He had done some really crazy things that people didn't like. Um, and then he also did turn to Christianity while he was in prison. He started reading the Bible a lot and turned to God. And then one of the attempted murders on him in prison, someone hid a razor in his toothbrush, and they tried to stab him with that. So that's just some of the imprisonment things. And then he did die 2 years later by a man named Christopher Scarver, who murdered him using this metal rod as seen here while they were both cleaning the showers. So Dahmer was actually labeled as sane during his trial, and this because they said that since Dahmer knew that he should hide the bodies, they thought that he knew what he was doing was wrong, and so they labeled him as sane. And for that, the jury found him sane on all 15 accounts, and thus sent him to prison instead of a mental institution, as said in the semantics of a sanity trial. But I just wanted you guys to think about if, for some reason, that he was labeled as insane, he would have gone to a mental asylum instead, and he would have lived out a different life there. That might have been different than his fate in the prison. And Dahmer's lawyers argued that his cannibal murders are themselves proof of his innocence, and that only such an insane man would do such a thing. So they were trying to get him that insane plea, but they weren't able to.